have dedicated time to this project over the last 2 years, and we spent about the last year and a half in Asheville making it, which is why we're having a party at the Firestone. It's awesome worker collective. So this project is all based on first-hand research. Behave Collective does a number of different types of work, but what we're best known for is these graphic campaigns. And the collective is also based in northeastern Maine, but we have this sort of satellite hive down at Weaseltown in Old Fort. Shout out to our hosts over here who are also bartending, who housed this project for the last year. Amazing. Previously housed in the Film Mechanic Studio, those folks were here earlier. Anyway, so this is all based on a 2-month research trip which happened a year and a half ago, or actually 2 years ago, all throughout West Virginia, Tennessee, and Kentucky, mostly in all the coal mining regions in that part of Appalachia. And the BF really wanted to make a poster about climate change, and carbon emissions are the leading contributor to climate change. So it made a lot of sense to do it about coal, and we actually had a lot of allies who were working in different types of resistance and solidarity work in the coal fields. So groups like Mountain Justice, Kentuckians for the Commonwealth, Coal River Mountain Watch, Southern Appalachian Mountain Stewards, all these different groups of people who are doing work against mountaintop removal, and we have more resources about them if you're interested in getting involved and supporting the work that they do. Anyway, so we spent about 2 months in the coal fields just talking to anybody and everybody who would talk to us and share their stories. So we brought our stories, like we showed them examples of the work that Beehive does and talked about them why we felt like it was really important to do a poster about mountaintop removal, and just got to hear stories and collect stories. And then spent about 6 months turning it into an image, like just doing all the idea generating, and then about a year and a half just drawing. So that adds up to like 10 years right there. You do the math right. So just a really brief overview of how this poster works. One thing that the Beehive does is that we never use humans. You may notice there's no humans except for the random Barbie doll in the bottom left corner, which if you're lucky you have that. You can come up and find it later. We use all animals and plants and insects as the characters, and this is a way of overlapping sort of like human, social justice and environmental justice groups, getting them to talk to each other, because we pretty strongly believe that this has to be like a really intersectional movement of resistance, so everybody working under one little cause is actually not going to get us the liberation that we're trying to work towards, right? We actually are all living under the same systems of oppression. And so talking to each other and cross-pollinating and working in solidarity with each other and recognizing that like the anti-war movement is actually the same thing as, you know, protecting endangered songbirds, right? Okay, if I start preaching, Kate will come in. Okay. So how many people here have heard of mountaintop removal before? Most people, that's great. It's a really violent form of coal mining. It's a really violent form of strip mining using these giant machines that basically turns mountains into moonscapes. The Appalachian Mountains are the second most biodiverse ecosystem in the world. Second only to the second only to the Central American rainforest. They're also the oldest mountain range in the world. So the biodiversity here is insane. It's a result of glaciation, basically all of North America getting covered in glaciers at some point really long ago. And the Appalachian Mountains sort of being the one thing that didn't get... Hello. I thought you were a kid. It's like a death wish. Right. And then... glaciation, right. So the Appalachian Mountains actually remained as these island communities where over thousands and millions of years all the speciation happened, all of these animals evolved into their own tiny unique ecosystems. When the glaciers receded up north, all of those animals came down and it just becomes this incredibly diverse place. So all of the animals in this poster are specific species native to Appalachia, unless they're invasive species for a specific reason. So for example, you start over here in the deep past. I'm going to explain how this is a timeline in a second, but all of these birds flying in with different gifts that they're bringing and blessings and curses, really, they're all wearing hats. These are all European starlings, which are an incredibly invasive species of bird that kind of has come in and sort of dominated in a number of different all habitats basically in this country, and they eradicate native songbirds. They'll actually like steal woodpecker nests and move their babies in. So this is an amazing metaphor for European colonization, right, and the displacement of First Nations people. And then also all the plants in this poster are specific characters. So that's also speaking to the incredible biodiversity of the plant families here and how much medicine and food there is represented in these mountains, native plants to here. So the way this poster works, I know a lot of you have heard this already, but the center is the present. Everything to the right of me is the past, sort of where we came from to get to where we are right now. And then everything to the right? To the right of me is the resistance, and then also the world we're trying to build, right? So all the different tactics of resistance happening against what's going on, and then what it is that we're actually trying to create when we can stop fighting. Does that make sense? Everyone? Yeah. All right. So I'm interested in what you all want to hear about, because I know a lot of you here heard a bunch of the stories before, and I was specifically interested in talking about the way deep past and the future, because I think we focused a lot in the middle. Does that feel like a good thing to do? Yeah? Okay, cool. So I talked a lot last time about this paradigm, right? So there's this linear system that we've sort of superimposed on this cyclical reality and this cyclical universe that we're actually existing in, right? So this this sort of linear time set of using things, digesting them, and creating waste, but not actually creating any like backflow into that system, right? So running out of these resources. And there's a number of reasons the deep passes in here. One is that coal was formed in the Carboniferous period from ancient swamps, which is this amazing metaphor as well, because swamps are like the liver of the earth, right? They actually have clean water and like digest well, they actually digest toxic waste, but
it's like a sieve.
It's like a sieve. Yeah. Right. Okay, there we go. That's kind of what I was saying. And so those prehistoric swamps that were livers when they were actually functioning as these like living ecosystems have then been compressed in the earth for millions of years and have become a liver and like a filter for the water. So we're talking a lot about the aquifers and the preciousness of the fresh water that's held in these mountains. And so looking at where we are today, it made a lot of sense to us, and also seeing all these patterns that keep repeating themselves. So like this very colonial reality, this colonial mentality, this very hierarchical structure that's going on, the displacement of people, the oppression and invisibilizing of certain communities is just like, hello, here we are, same old story, right? It's been happening everywhere, all over the planet since humans showed up, basically. And just looking at how important it is to understand where we came from, to figure out how we got to where we are, and how we're going to change things to move differently into the future. And so this whole part of the poster is about the deep past, and a different relationship to landscape, and a different relationship to territory. And this whole idea of like knowledge of place and understanding where we are, I think has a lot to do with how we've gotten here. So if we could actually see the waste that we were creating around us, we would probably be living easy differently, right? Like if you can just drive to the dump or have somebody pick up your garbage, the amount of garbage you produce would probably be pretty different. Or if you're living off of, solar energy only, you're probably going to unplug your computer every time you're not using it, right? Like you're just going to have this very different recognition and relationship to like what you're using and what you're consuming. Or if you're growing all the food you eat, that's going to be really different when you sit down with that rice. And when you sit down with those beans and you shelled every single one of them, right? So this understanding of where our stuff comes from and where it goes is a story and a thread that weaves a lot through this poster. And like I was explaining before, the whole bottom half is the local story, and then as we move up, it like zooms out onto a more national and then global scale. A lot of this image has to do with the wave. So if you see this vantage point, that's like where everything's going, right? And also where our cheap plastic crowd comes from. And so this idea of like, well, just this recognition of that we actually have a very limited understanding of where our stuff actually comes from, right? So anyway, I'm going to go back to here. So here we have the deep past. We have a different understanding. If you look at the different character scenes, so you have the scene of these snails planting corn, beans, and squash, which are the three sisters, right? They're all companion plants. You have the scene right here of this heron fishing, and and these beavers creating a dam here and sort of like cutting down trees and sort of altering the landscape. And that's in there for a number of reasons. Specifically to address like the relationship with land that was here before white folks showed up. So it's not like that the First Nations people who were living here. Is anyone here from a First Nations person or like from any of those communities? That maybe can speak to this more eloquently than me. Just checking. But so there's this like mythology, right, that First Nations people were either like completely inadequate and like had to be removed because they obviously weren't using the land to its like to its utmost potential, which is what the white folks came in and did, right? It was like progress, progress, progress. Or this like very idealized idea of like, you know, they're like all walking really gently and treading lightly and whatever. And so this scene with the beavers and the heron, beavers and herons have a symbiotic relationship, right? So beavers will come in and they'll actually be really destructive to the landscape. They'll like cut down a bunch of trees and they'll totally mess with the water system and they'll build dams and sort of like really impact it in this kind of like devastating sort of looking way. But what in fact is happening is they're actually creating all of this habitat for other species, right? So where there was like a fast-moving stream, they're creating a pond. So the herons have a really direct relationship to them, right? They come in and they have one more area. They have fish to make rookeries there, and then the beavers leave, and the stream returns, you know, because nobody's upkeeping the dam, the stream returns to its original state, and what they've left is this incredibly rich sort of like, where all the sediment has been forming for years that they were there, that becomes this incredibly nourishing, fertile ground for new life to grow out of. So just this understanding that that the health of the land is directly related to the health of the beings living on it, which is something pretty far from where we are right now, right? So with the way that we're treating and valuing our water and our air, it kind of seems like we've forgotten that a bit, that we're actually like, you know, beings living on this planet that are dependent on these things. So yeah, so just really looking at this different relationship to landscape versus this like, you know, very short-sighted view of what's going on, and that takes us to this this sort of future, or what we're building towards. And I want to direct y'all to, and I'm just going to talk for a second.